Some helpful person has made a list for men, a list of what not to buy your wife for Mother's Day. I realize this is a little late, but just in case any of you men were planning on running out to the shopping mall after listening to this message, this list might help. 1. Don't buy anything that plugs in. If it involves electricity, you need it, not her. 2. Don't buy clothing that involves sizes. 3. Avoid all things useful. The new silver polish advertised to save hundreds of hours is not going to win you any brownie points. 4. Don't buy anything that involves weight loss or self-improvement. 5. Don't buy jewelry. The jewelry your wife wants, you can't afford, and the jewelry you can afford, she doesn't want. 6. Don't spend too much. How do you think we're going to afford that? She'll ask. But don't spend too little. She won't say anything, but probably she'll think, is that all I'm worth? So, good luck, men. Hopefully this year you're successful. Today we honor our mothers. Not every woman can be a mother, of course. Some women and their husbands try for years to conceive a child and it never happens. And some women choose not to have children. Some women never meet the right man for a life partner, and people have all kinds of life situations. We can't put everyone in the same box. And some people who don't fit the category of mother deserve to be honored. In fact, we really ought to have a day to honor all those people who give loving service to others. But today, we will limit our focus to women who are responsible for the well-being of children. Moms, grandmothers, foster mothers, every woman involved in a parenting role. I've taken for my text today the passage where Jesus speaks to his disciples during the meal of the Last Supper in John 14:23-29.
Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. All this I have spoken while still with you. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. You heard me say, I am going away, and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe."
Let's listen to verse 27 again.
Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid.
Christ wanted his disciples to have a sense of inner peace when he was no longer with them. He didn't want them to be afraid. He was sending them out into a hostile world. As long as they served him, they would not know any outward peace. The reason I say that In Hebrews chapter 11, the writer places on record the list of the heroes of our faith. And here is how that chapter describes what some of the followers of Christ had to face.
Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released, so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawn in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted and ill-treated. The world was not worthy of them.
Now, having heard that, it begs the question, is this the peace that Christ wanted for them? His disciples knew no outer peace, but they had an inner peace that the world could not shake. Isn't that what you desire above all else for your children? A new word has crept into our vocabulary in recent times, and that is helicopter parents. Those are parents who hover all over their children all the time, trying to protect them. Ironically, the main thing helicopter parents achieve is that their children lose the ability to cope with their problems by themselves. What we want for our children is what Jesus wanted for his disciples: inner peace, inner strength, inner confidence that will allow them to stand tall in the hour of testing. So how do we give them that peace that the world can neither give nor take away? First of all, tell them who they are. If they have a strong sense of identity and a sense of self, they are on the path to inner peace. There was a women's singing group called Sweet Honey in the Rock, and they have a song titled No Mirrors in My Nana's House. One of the singers explained the origin of that song. One of her friends was telling her about growing up in a very poor neighborhood. She grew up in her grandmother's house, and she said, "You know, in my Nana's house there were no mirrors." Her friend asked her, "How did you know what you looked like?" "Well," she said, "my Nana told me. Every morning I would get up and get dressed and comb my hair. And then I would go to Nana and I would say, 'How do I look?' And she would tell me. She would tell me I was beautiful. She said my skin was smooth and golden brown, kissed by the sun. And she said my eyes shone like silver moonbeams. In my Nana's house there were no mirrors, so I saw myself through my Nana's eyes, who loved me, and the beauty of everything was in her eyes." What a wonderful gift to give to a child. Secondly, we give them inner peace when we help them develop a sense of responsibility. There is an old story titled Beth Martin's Pretty Mother, and that has a surprisingly modern theme. A daughter decides that her mother needs a makeover. Beth Martin's mother used to be quite a beauty. But that was before Beth's father died, and Mrs. Martin was left to run the farm and care for Beth all by herself. Mrs. Martin was determined to give Beth every opportunity. She let her own clothes wear out and turn grey so that she could buy Beth fine dresses. She worked from sunup to sundown to pay for Beth's fine education and her private music lessons. She never asked Beth to help with the chores, so she wouldn't be distracted from her homework or her music practice. Beth, though a fine girl, however, became lazy and spoiled. But young Beth Martin was not beyond help. One day she went to the doctor and asked for a prescription of some sort to put the colour back in her mother's cheeks. The wise doctor wrote out a list of instructions for restoring her mother's beauty. First, he suggested that Beth give her mother some sincere compliments and expressions of gratitude for all her hard work. Next, Beth was to buy her mother a nice dress and invite her out for an evening of entertainment. And then Beth was to start cleaning the house, helping out with the farm, and cooking her mother's meals. Beth Martin read the list and took it to heart. That day she began following the doctor's prescription. In no time at all, her mother looked more relaxed and prettier than she had in years. It's a beautiful Mother's Day story, but I think that the effect on Beth was greater than the effect on her mother. Lazy, spoiled children are not happy children, and they will not make happy adults. Beth needed to be helping around the farm long before this. We do our children no favors when we deprive them of the opportunity of contributing to the family's well-being. How will they ever discover that they are capable unless we require them to try their hand at tasks around the house? How will they ever discover the discipline that they will need to succeed in life if we do not set expectations for them? Some parents fail their children because it's easier to avoid conflict than it is to teach them to pick up their clothes, clean their rooms, help with the housework. Such tasks are necessary, however, for them to be healthy, happy, productive adults. We will help them develop inner peace when we establish their identity and help them develop a sense of responsibility. And thirdly, most important of all, we help them develop inner peace when we help them develop a sense of God's presence in their lives. In his book, Finding God in All the Right Places, Walter Wangerin tells how his mother helped him find God. He writes of a childhood crisis of faith. For a long time, he thought he was the only person in church who couldn't see Jesus. His mother took him to church every week. He noticed the joy and the peace that radiated from the church members' faces. He wanted to meet this Jesus they talked about. But he'd never seen Jesus in his church. So little Walter set out on a quest to find Jesus. He searched all over his Sunday school classroom, but found no sign of Jesus. He crawled under the pews, but still he couldn't spot Jesus. He poked his head into the pastor's study. He even sneaked up to the pulpit and looked into this inner sanctum. No Jesus. Finally, little Walter thought of one room, holy and mysterious, into which he had never dared venture. The ladies' restroom. That must be the place where Jesus hung out. So that Sunday, Walter worked up his courage and sneaked into the ladies' restroom. He checked all the stalls, but Jesus was nowhere to be found. Walter returned to the sanctuary just in time for the Holy Communion. Ordinarily, he paid little attention to this sacred ritual, but this time he noticed how peaceful and happy his mother looked after eating the bread and drinking from the cup. He leaned in close to her, sensing that she bore the answer to his quest. "Mama, what is that?" he asked. She tried to deflect his attention, but he wouldn't give up. "What is that, Mama? What is that smell?" She finally replied, "Oh, my son, that is Jesus. It is Jesus inside of me." And little Walter finally understood a tiny piece of the mystery. Jesus wasn't lost. Jesus was living inside of his mama. Some of us probably wouldn't have found Jesus if he hadn't lived inside our mama or our papa or our grandparents or some other loving adult. That's how we normally come to Christ. We come through the influence of someone very close to us whom we love and admire. And so the question for every mother this day, indeed a question for every adult, could a child sense Jesus in your life? Could a young person find faith in your witness? What we want for our children is the same thing Jesus wanted for his disciples, a peace that the world cannot give nor take away. We can help them with that by helping them have a sense of who they are, by helping them develop a sense of responsibility and by showing them Jesus in our own lives. God bless you. Happy Mother's Day.